So, hello, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our Evolve 01 special. And today is really special because we have our first international guest, Dr. Terry Jackson. Today, our topic revolves about transformational thinking, the first step towards individual and organizational greatness. So, I'd like to say much more about Mr. Terry. Dr. Terry is an experienced executive advisor, a thought leader, an organizational consultant who holds a PhD in management and has helped executives from Google, IBM, and Amazon achieve sustainable behavioral change. As a TEDx speaker, author of 2 books, and a contributor to Forbes and Chief Executive Magazine, he is a globally recognized leader in the future of work and leadership development. So, welcome, Terry. Welcome to this Evolve session. It's a pleasure having you today.
Thank you so very much. It's a pleasure to be a guest on your show this morning.
Great. I'll just like to introduce you to our host for the day, the conversation I have from you.
Thank you so very much.
Hello. Oh, no, just a moment. I'll just check on system.
Yeah, I am here, Sidra. Am I audible? Perfect. Thank you, Dr. Terry, for being a guest. And I'll just, start with where Evolve comes from and why we started the initiative. Evolve 01 came from us. When we started our journey, there were a lot of failures that we faced to become the organization that we are today. Celebrate these failures by listening to stories of people who made it and who have made an impact in the society, be it through their life, be it through their work, and they have something to share so that other people might be inspired by it. So Evolve 01 started as that initiative, and having ample of guests, in the past, we are very, very pleased to have you. The story that resonated with her, so that the entire group can hear. So we are happy to have you over here. It's an absolute pleasure.
Thank you. It is an absolute pleasure to be a guest on your show this morning. I love the story of how you began, of your organization began by telling the stories and learning from those stories, because that's probably one of the best ways to learn, is to listen to what others have done or what they have not done, and then take that information, apply it, and then make it work for you. So that is awesome.
Thank you, sir. And we usually start Evolve with the first most important question. You know, PhD. Of course, I know a little about your background and the way you rose, but the audience doesn't. So, could you please, tell us a journey from where you started, a little to, what were the challenges you faced, and you being where you are, how's the feeling, sir?
Oh, well, thank you so very much. I'm going to begin at the very, very, very beginning. And that is, I am in the United States of America, of course. I'm in Wilmington, North Carolina. So I'm in the South. If you know anything about the South, if you know anything, and if you've ever heard the name Dr. Martin Luther King before, you know that there was issues in the states around racism, as we call it. Well, I was born in 1963, and at that time, I was born into a very segregated society. I saw the white water fountains, which were intended for white people to drink out of, and I saw the other water fountains that was labeled colored people. And so, with that, growing up in the South, um, one of the first challenges was, of course, skin color, given what the social construct was. But one important thing that my family always supported me with and told me, and that is, you can do anything and you can be anything. The key to doing anything and being anything is education. So they always They always impressed upon me the importance of getting an education. So that was extremely important. So as I traveled my path, one of the things that for me was education to do extremely well. I also enjoyed sports a great deal. So what I was able to do as a little kid from a sports perspective is to understand that if I can be an excellent athlete, I can also transfer those skills into the classroom. So I played sports, the American football, the basketball, the baseball, and I was very good. I used that to build my confidence as I being a very good athlete. As I built my confidence as an athlete, it also helped me build my confidence as an academic in the classroom. So somewhere around my third grade year, we desegregated our schools, and so whites and blacks went to school together. And as I looked at my quote unquote my white peers, I assessed them not only academically, but I assessed them athletically. And I ended up finding out that I knew that I was better than a lot of my white friends or white peers athletically, but I challenged myself to be better than them academically. So as I went through my junior high and high school and graduated, I ended up being team captain on for most of the sports that I played. But I also ended up being taking a lot of what we called gifted and talented classes. Those were the classes who for people who it showed potential around being gifted academically. So when I chose to go to college, I chose to go to a college that was what we call here HBCU, which is a historically black college university. About 5,000 students, North Carolina Central University in Durham, North Carolina, which is right across town from Duke University. So as I went there with being a predominantly uh, African American, we were actually able to take classes over at Duke University. And so with that, I challenged myself again, and I'm no longer playing sports now. I challenged myself to do well academically. But more importantly, as I was in the School of Business, what I realized was that there were no management gurus or specialists or experts who looked like me. We're talking about in the early 1980s. So as there were none who looked like me, I began to read, of course, the works of all the others. But in the back of my mind, what I wanted to do one day in my life was become one of those gurus, one of those thought leaders. So my first job out of college, I went to work for the railroad in accounting. It was a pretty good job, and people wanted to work for the railroad industry. We call it the transportation industry. But I was sitting behind the desk. My undergraduate degree was in marketing, so I wanted to be out in sales. From there, I decided sales was where I wanted to be, so I took a position with Mobil Oil, or Exxon Mobil as you know them today, in sales that moved me from North Carolina, or actually moved me from Atlanta to Los Angeles, California. That is where I probably gained my best, or really tapped into what we know as business acumen. How do you really do business, right? I worked amongst some of the most intelligent people I'd ever met in my life, but I also knew that I was an intelligent being, and if I applied myself, that I could succeed. So I did very well with ExxonMobil. However, with the family and my wife being from the East Coast, she wanted to move back. So we came back to North Carolina, where I was the first African American pharmaceutical sales rep in my city. And so here we go again with another challenge. However, with that challenge, I was home. So I went to school with some of the children of the doctors here. So that kind of helped the situation. They remembered me from playing when I played sports or when I went to school with their kids. So that opened the door. But as we call it, the glass ceiling in America, um, I still felt like I was limited. So I went into business for myself. And as I went into business for myself, I also decided that I wanted to earn a master's degree. And so I'm doing pretty good in business. I'm earning a master's degree. And when I completed the master's degree, which my wife and I both did our masters together, which is an interesting story as well. Because there were times I was working and I couldn't get my schoolwork done. So of course I leaned on my wife to kind of do my work at the same time. So that was interesting. But once I finished the masters, I asked myself, what next? And I decided to do some research. Do I want to do a PhD? Do I want to go to law school? So I decided on the PhD. And then doing the PhD, I did the PhD. And again, I'm already self-employed. I have my own business. I'm doing pretty good financially. So why should I do the PhD? And I did the PhD because I wanted to ask America a question. And the question I wanted to ask America was, as a Black man, growing up in segregation, moving into desegregation, I'm now about to earn the highest degree in your land from your highest collegiate institution. What do I have to do next to prove that I'm worthy? That was a question for America, given the state of where we were and how race was looked at. So I earned that degree. I decided to sell my business and go back into corporate setting. I had the opportunity then to go and work for a marketing company where I led $1 billion division of an organization. I had sales and I had operations. Of course, I'm very familiar with sales because I'd been in sales with ExxonMobil. Now I'm managing a team. I go to Columbus, Ohio, and I go and I work with the team in which they had never worked for an African American before. They never had anyone to lead that division. That division wasn't doing as well, so we turned that division around. And in 5 years, I never missed a number. For those who were on the sales side of the organization, at some point in time in those 5 years, all of them made what we call the presidential club, which means that they were the best of the best in sales and they went on company trips. And there was a couple times where we were all on the same trip together and other people in other divisions in the country wanted to know what we were doing that was so special. And I told them what we did was so special is that I treated my employees as human beings. I understood what motivated and inspired them. I got to know them. I got to know their spouses. I got to know their pets. I got to know their anniversary dates. I got to know their birth dates. And I got my secretary to buy cards. And every time there was a special day that came up, I sent someone a card. Or I told them to tell their children happy birthday from me and from the company that we work for. So I got to know them intimately. Sometimes on the weekend, we would go to football games together. We would go to basketball games together. We would just get together and sit and talk. So I needed to know what inspired them and what had motivated them. And then I knew, quote unquote, what to do or what to say to get more. As we like to say in the business industry, how can you get more from less? Because in 2008, when I took over that division, we were in a recession in the US. And being in a recession and everybody was cutting head count and scaling back versus spending a lot of money, what I knew I could tap into was the human spirit. And if I could tap into the human spirit, I could get that performance out of them, inspiring them around what it is that motivates them. And oftentimes it's family. Oftentimes it's how do I perform against my peer, right? But I was also able to also fashion that into a team to understand that each and every one on the team was important and each and every one made a contribution. And so I was successful there. But I said to myself, if I have this knowledge that I think that I have and I've been successful, why can't I do it for myself? Why can't I go into consulting and coaching for myself and help individuals, leaders, and organizations uh, the same way? So in 2013, after 5 years of being extremely successful, I stepped away and I created JCG Consulting Group. And what we do is we help leaders navigate ambiguity and unsecure and excuse me, it's early in the morning.
No
we
problem.
help leaders we help leaders navigate ambiguity and uncertainty to work on the right things. Because as a leader, You have to be able to work on the right task. That's what it means to be able to drive your organization to success. You have to know what are the right things in the marketplace that need to be worked on that's going to give us a competitive advantage. And so I help leaders clear out all of the chaos, become very focused on this is the right thing that we need to work on at this given time, because given what's happening in the marketplace, this is going to give us an advantage. And that's pretty much how my career has been. It's what I do now. And as you've listed, I've worked with some of the bigger tech companies out in Silicon Valley. We've actually did a leadership accelerator out in Pinterest a couple years ago, in which we had the CTO of Uber there, we had the CEO of DocuSign there. We worked with at the time she was the senior vice president of strategic planning for Intel. Now she is the CEO of Zurex, and that is Asia Evans. And of course, Zurex was purchased by Amazon. She's still the CEO, but they are building autonomously driven cars to work on a grid within the cities. We've yet to build the grids, but that technology is coming.
Perfect. Quite inspiring, sir. Uh,
Thank you.
you know, I just picked a few things and I could see a constant pattern over there. One is that you've always realized your potential, right early on. You said you're good at sport, you're good at, but you need to be good at education. So I would say that, you always picked up the potential. Uh, then you sought after opportunities and then you focused on opportunities to make it your own. And that I can see that you've moved it into a professional career as well now, where you help others focus on identifying opportunities, then focusing on that potential. One question I really, really want to ask you is, of course, you've groomed a lot of leaders and you are in the profession. So, what is the one uh, key find in every promising leader that you've seen?
What I find in the most promising leader that I've dealt with and that I've had the opportunity to have conversations with is they realize that they don't know it all. They raise their hand and say, I need help. They understand that it is their job to develop their people to their maximum potential so that they can, again, work on the right things. When you hire employees and you bring them in, you have to trust them to be able to do what you hired them for. It used to be that leaders would have the right answer. The best leaders in the world today know the right question to ask. And so it's all about asking the right questions to have your people to think so that they can implement and execute against whatever the plan is. So it's about serving your, as a leader, serving your employees in such a way that you help remove the obstacles so that they can perform. That is what made me successful in my corporate position from '08 to 13. Is I went there with a quote unquote servant leadership mind of how do I best serve? How do I best remove the obstacles so that my salespeople can sell, so that my operations people can operate? They are the experts at this. I'm just a facilitator of the process. And I need to be able to get the right information and get the right help that enables them to succeed. And so the best leader, as I said, asks the right questions of not only their people, but of the other leaders in the organization, because it's that question is about vision as well. Where are we going? Where do we want to be? Who are we? And what if is one of the most powerful questions a leader can ask, because it enables the creation of different scenarios in the marketplace. If you have let's take a, let's, I don't know if you have Uber there or a form of Uber,
We
but you're
do.
familiar with Uber. All Uber did was took a look at the traditional taxi service and said, what if we didn't have to buy, this inventory of cars for a taxi industry? What if we contracted with people to do this taxi service versus, hiring this person or as a taxi driver? We could spread this across the globe just by using, technology. Let's take a look at our phones. I remember years ago when we had a hardwired phone into the wall in the United States, and we had to sit in one place. And then I remember when the radio and all of that was separate, um, and then all of a sudden, somebody had the idea. What if we converge all of these technologies into one to create this thing that we know is a smartphone? I'm going to date myself a little bit and give away my age, but I remember working for Mobil Oil in 1990 when I was the first person in the district with a cellular phone. And so all the technological advances that I've seen over the years, you can't possibly be an expert at all that I've seen created. But what you can do is be able to conceptualize what it is and know the right question to ask, and ask the most important question, and that is, what if? What if begins to tap into the imagination of the human being and the curious spirit of the human being, and you can create new technology. For instance, AI, as they're talking about AI taking over the world. There's only one thing that AI can't beat, and that's the human brain, because that's what created AI.
Got it. Lovely. Uh, so when you were talking about something that we, of course, in our generation haven't experienced the heat of, is discrimination, and you've been a part of a transformation where discrimination might exist in pockets, but is not that prevalent in the market right now. Uh, I don't know if you have seen this movie. It inspires me a lot. It's about Denzel Washington, and the movie is called The Great Debaters, which talks about a set of young men who go out and they fight against Harvard Law, and it's a very inspiring story to me, especially since the way they present themselves, the way they debate the topics that they know of. Uh, I've always wondered that today, it's a different market out there. Everyone talks about inclusivity. Everyone talks about everyone wanting to be a part of something bigger and not have differences and lines. Um, do you really think that we are going in the right direction, or it is just a gimmick, but we're not really accepting in the form of mental acceptance? Like, are we there? Are we understanding people truly, or is it just some form of thing that we are getting aware of but not accepted as yet?
That is an excellent question. I thank you so very much for that question. What we call it here in the U.S., and you may call it the same there, is diversity, equity, and inclusion. We call it DEI. Diversity is a term that was coined and started the usage of that term in the United States in the 1980s. I did some research on this because I read an article. I wrote an article on this probably 2011, 2012. And that article was titled Always Being a Winner, but Never in the Winner Circle. And what that really meant was, as an African American or a Black employee in corporate America, there are plenty who are successful. However, we never get to the CEO level of any Fortune 500 company. At that time, in the history of the Fortune 500, there had only been in the history of the Fortune 500 about 13 Black CEOs. Today, there's probably about 15 to 18 Black CEOs in corporate America. So I asked myself why. So if you ask me the question, are we really practicing? Are we living diversity, equity, inclusion? Or are we just talking diversity, equity, inclusion and not accepting it? I'm going to say we're not accepting it. If you know the if you know the history of the United States, then you know the history of those who've been subjugated. At some point in time, any group of people that's ever come to the US have been subjugated. They've been oppressed one way or the other. That still exists. It exists differently. It's systemic. All we have to do is look at the boardrooms of corporations, global corporations, and to see who's there. All we have to do is look at the uh, executive teams to see who's there, and we get a pretty good understanding. There may be some exceptions every once in a while, but they still pretty much look the same. Some of my friends who do work in that space of DEI, and let me back up. When there's a challenge or an organization has a challenge with not accepting DEI, it's really a leadership issue. Because what I found and what you will find in organizations, if an organization is serious about an initiative, they give it a line on their in their budget, and that line has money attached to it. So we can go out and solve what the challenge is. But most organizations I find do not apply a budget in that line. They don't apply a money figure to that line to say we're going to go out and we're going to solve this DEI issue. I haven't heard an organization say we're going to solve it. We can send people to the moon and in space, but we have yet to be able to understand and work with the differences of all the people around the world, right? Here's one thing I know: we're all human. So it baffles me as to why the pigmentation of my skin causes someone to see me different, or the religion that I practice causes someone to see me different, or because my speech may be a little thicker because I'm from a different part of the world. You know, I know that when I peel back my skin and I think about my organs that operate my body, they're all the same. They're the same of anyone who is brown, who is red, who is white. And so for those who created this system around some particular group of people who look a particular way, who have this privilege, I've never understood it. It's some of the most ignorant rationalization that I've ever heard or have ever seen, because if something happens and there's an accident and someone has to go to the hospital, when the doctor lays you on the table, everybody looks the same. So this false notion of somebody's skin color enabling them to be more privileged is illogical. But that system has been built around the world. And there's a group of people who don't want to accept that they do that because they buy into their own fallacy of having some sense of superiority. And so we're not accepting it only because they don't want to accept it, because they built the system. Now, me growing up, what I've always known, that to be knowledgeable, and what I was told as a young child is you have to be 2 or 3 times better than them. And so I work on being 2 to 3 times better. I got stacks of books around me right now that I can look at, and I tap into my knowledge base. I'm always improving my knowledge base because what I realized is when I did my PhD, that was only the beginning of learning. One of my professors told me in my PhD process, they said, now you have become a systematic creator of knowledge. I took that very seriously because I started out in the PhD process in information systems management, but I understood that leadership is really where it was. The ability to galvanize, inspire, and motivate people toward a common goal. To be able to see what the others can't see, but be able to take them to the promised land by developing a vision and the messages. So I think that around the DEI, we are not accepting from a global perspective. And I think there's a fear around that non-acceptance. And that fear is when you look around the globe, there are more brown people in the world than people who are white. And there's a fear that maybe how they subjugated others, that the brown people would do the same thing to them, right?
Yeah.
You know, yeah, that's what I actually think because performance shows in the United States where there are African Americans who become CEOs. The data says that for that African American to become CEO, more than likely they're better educated than their colleagues who were CEO. And guess what happens to the stock of a company when they name an African American CEO? It jumps multiples. So it increases the value to the stakeholders because the value of the company increases because the experience of an African American CEO is more and the educational level is more. So they've had to prove along the way that they have the ability to perform. So I don't ever think we'll ever get to a place where we're going to see the actual acceptance because they see it as someone taking over or replacing them because they associate a privilege to the skin color. Now, that's in the United States, but those same biases and prejudices happen in other countries where it may not be skin color. It may be what your status is in a particular community. I'm not as aware of the system in India, but what I do know is there used to be a caste system. I do know that the Dalits were at the bottom. That's what I do know. And so, only because of how they were categorized years ago, it probably has nothing to do with their ability, their cognitive ability to learn, to apply, and to perform. If I go to Africa, if I go to South Africa, the same kind of thing, that whole apartheid system was in place, and that was around skin color, right? It's never had anything to do with intelligence. If you know anything about IQ testing, that was racially biased for the mere fact to prove that they were more intelligent, because we know that IQ is definitely not a measure of anyone's intelligence. If I live in a particular society and I have all of these books around me, I can read, and as a result, my IQ is going to be higher than someone who doesn't have access to the same resources. If the playing field is even, black and brown people will always excel. We'll always succeed if the playing field is even. But they've made the playing field uneven, and we succeed anyway.
Yeah, rightly said, sir. When you stand at the fountain, it's your eyes that create the perception. You see the color of the person drinking the water, but you do not see the water and the blood are the same color, right?
That's right.
And I really feel that, all these learnings of your, I personally want to know how you bring it down to transformational leadership. Like, how is it that you see leaders first realize and then accept that these are some conditions around which you can get uh, outputs. You can get your team performing. You can get things to happen around you that make sense. Have you witnessed such cases?
Yes, I have, and I'm glad that you asked that question. You know, pretty much all of my life, I've believed in education, whether it's in a formal setting or in a school, whether it's reading. And so I've always tried to have people around me that I consider to be more intelligent than myself, because I always want to learn. And we can learn from everybody. We either learn what to do or we learn what not to do. So everyone we can learn from. But I wanted to have people around me who either have done what I want to do or are doing it and are ahead of me because they've been in it longer. And I want to be able to ask questions and so as I began to look at people who I considered to be successful and what they were doing and how they were thinking, I would just ask questions. And as I asked questions, what would happen was people would introduce me to different literature, different books to read. And so I've always been curious that way. And what it led me to understand is that for the people who are doing the same kinds of things, they're thinking the same kinds of ways. And as I observe people, I'm like, well, if I want to go to the next level of thinking, the next level of performance, then I can't think like the average group. So what is it what is it that I have to learn? What information do I need to expose myself to? What people can I expose myself to who are thinking and doing? And so that's always led people to suggest books to me or to suggest courses to me, that would that they thought would help me in my journey of continuous learning to become a better human being, to become a better servant. And so, we would often hear the word transformation, and I'm like, okay, so tell me, what is that? And someone gave me this great example. In nature, you have the caterpillar that goes from being a caterpillar over a period of time to becoming a butterfly. And that butterfly never becomes a caterpillar again. And that's transformation. It's totally different from change. We like to talk in the corporate setting, change management, change leadership. Well, change can be reversed. Let me give you an example. If I decide that maybe I have 20 pounds on me that I want to lose, I want to get rid of it and get really in shape. So I'm going to go exercise at the gym, I'm going to go jog, and I do all of those things, but I don't change my dietary regimen. I don't assess in my mind mentally how the new person is going to look physically, what it's going to take mentally. What do I have to change mentally to become this new body, this person that's lean and mean and in shape, right?
Yeah.
If I don't assess that in my mind, but yet I go through the motions of the exercise and I lose the weight, initially I'm successful. But because I haven't assessed it and I haven't changed it and I don't have the picture of what it looks like, 6 months down the road, I gained the 20 pounds back. And I'm wondering what happened. And that's because I didn't take a look at the paradigm in which I saw the new fit body. I didn't examine the mental models and then deconstruct that mental model, which would enable me to change my dietary regimen and what I eat, as well as continuously challenge myself from an exercise perspective, right? I didn't change my mindset around that. And
Yeah.
because I didn't, guess what happened? I went back to what the old Terry was. So I changed a little bit, but then I changed back, but I wasn't transformed because I didn't go through that process. So as I began to think about this, I said, wow, transformation is where it's at. And so I created this whole concept to me around transformational thinking, which is actually an enhanced thinking system. Because in this system, it enables us to deal with everything in life and to take a look at it. I mentioned mental models, to take a look at it. How do we see the world given what our life's experiences have been? How can we deconstruct how we see something and reconstruct it to our advantage so that we can continue to excel? And so this transformational thinking is an inclusive system, right? And it's skill based because within it, I've created three models around decision making: other people's views, plus minus interesting, and consider all factors,
Okay.
right? And so there are three decision models in here. But we've all heard uh, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. And so in transformational thinking, you're always remaining the student because you're always seeking and searching as a student. I like to say, and I guess I created this quote: in order to be the master, you have to remain the student. So from a transformational thinking perspective, it enables three things. It enables better decision making. You become a solution thinker versus solving a problem, and it enables you to improve relationships. Those are the three things that it does. And as human beings, we want to make better decisions. We want to become solution thinkers, especially when you're dealing in the world of tech with all the challenges that are faced. And we want to improve our relationships with others because we get things done in organizations through other people. We can't do it all, right? So we work with perceptions, how I perceive something. I need to understand how I perceive. I need to kind of understand how you perceive. And then we bring those perceptions together and we create a much better solution as a team than we could have ever created as individuals, right? I like to think, we're taught that 1 + 1 = 2. That's only with inanimate objects. If I have an ink pen or a book and I put one book here and one book here, 1 + 1 = 2. But if I'm dealing with human beings, 1 + 1 could equal three or more.
Yeah.
What I learned in my couple of my visits to Silicon Valley, I said, well, how is it on the east coast of the United States we think this way, and in Silicon Valley they think a different way on the West Coast? What's the real difference? It's because they think exponentially. They think exponentially and from a quantum perspective. And so transformational thinking is really about how do we think exponentially? How do we go how do we go 2, 4, 16, 256, 65,000, 43 million? That's 5 steps. 5 steps to think. Yes, 5 steps. And I just went quantumly and exponentially in 5 steps. That's the thought process. Now they've had some challenges here lately with the bank over there failing and all that kind of good stuff, and a lot of those tech companies moving down to Austin, Texas, right? And so Austin is going to become the new Silicon Valley, right? But the thought processes are the same. They're still
Yeah.
thinking exponentially. They're still thinking quantumly. I'm sure you guys have contact with them. So how do I perceive? So I need to go from thinking 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 to 2, 4, 16, 256, 65,000. In
Yeah.
4 steps, I've got to 64,000. That's how I need to think, right? And then when we're having these conversations, I test of a conversation. A free thinking zone means that we're going to play with ideas. No idea is wrong. No idea is better than the other initially. And that allows us to expand our perceptions. We're going to dream and we're going to imagine. And we're going to challenge all assumptions And then we're going to challenge the way that we think as individuals. And then we're going to construct shared ideas, not individual ideas. We're going to take the shared idea, we're going to develop it, we're going to nurture it, and we're going to move forward with the shared idea where 5 of us have 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 input and contributed to this ideas, because that one idea is going to be greater than any one of our 5 ideas together that we came up with. So we play with the free thinking zone, right, where it's open communication. And here are 8 principles of the free thinking zone. We temporarily suspend ego, emotion, and judgment, because what we're trying to do is for the greater good of the team and ultimately the greater good of the organization or the greater good of society. Second, we're going to invite, encourage, and include diversity. So within transformational thinking, there is going to be inclusion, because we're going to bring everybody into the conversation, and everybody is equal in the conversation. First and foremost, we're all human beings. We're going to go for speed and quantity, and we're going to worry about the quality of the ideas after the fact. We want to toss out as many ideas as we possibly can so everybody has a voice, and then we'll worry about the quality of those ideas afterwards. We're not going to censor anybody's thoughts or ideas. We're not going to censor others. So again, it's important that others have a voice in the process. We're going to proactively listen to find the connections, the interconnections, and the patterns around the ideas that we're sharing. See, here's the thing about chaos. Chaos, ambiguity, uncertainty is always going to happen. But within the chaos are patterns. When you identify the patterns, even in data, you identify the patterns in data, and once you study the patterns become information. You take the information and you apply the information, you implement the information, and it becomes knowledge, because you either learn what to do or what not to do. And if you've applied the knowledge and it's created for you the desired result, the income or the outcome that you're looking for, then it becomes wisdom, because you've applied it and you know that it works. That's where the wisdom comes in. So 6, what we're going to do is avoid and creatively challenge all the assumptions. 7, we're going to use our imagination freely. And we don't own the ideas, but we play with them, and we have fun with the ideas. And most important, and the 8th principle of the free thinking zone is we're going to trust and respect others. We're going to include others, and we will not violate the human spirit. Those are some powerful principles of transformational thinking. And so not only do we utilize linear logic within the transformational system, but we utilize lateral logic as well. So transformation, as I said, it's an enhanced thinking system, right? So we want you to think, we want you to share in this system, because it makes organizations better, right? I mentioned 3 decision models. CAF, consider all factors. You start with your purpose, you create a value, and then there are certain steps within it, and you come up with your key successes, and then you start to examine what are the possible barriers to the successes that we've created. So we're thinking from a holistic perspective. When I talk about PMI, plus, minus, interesting, the same process: purpose, values, steps, keys to success, and then the possible barriers. And the last is other points of view. Same kind of process, right? We call it solution thinking. And one of the things that we always include, as I mentioned, is the human spirit, the ability to listen, the ability to think, the ability to touch and the sense and the smell, because all of that enables learning, it enables new ideas. It enables inclusiveness of everyone in the process. And then, we have another 5-step solution thinking process, which is to identify the problem, establish the root causes, play with solutions, approve, and improve the solution, and then you monitor it as you move along the process so you can adjust uh, as we as you move forward. So there's a whole process in this, and there's not only the book, but there is the workbook that takes you through the steps to become a transformational thinker. And so nature is at the very root of transformational thinking. Because one of the most important questions I ever ask myself when I'm baffled is, what does nature teach me about this? Nature in and of itself is the greatest teacher.
Yeah.
Whether I walk out and I'm looking at the trees, I'm looking at the grass grow, I'm listening to the birds sing, there's an answer in all of that. And so synergy, which is team power, is big. We talked about that, including everyone. We like the word also within transformational thinking, symbiosis, meaning how do we create win-win situations? Critical mass, that equals change. But what we really want to work with is, how do we take the critical mass and make it a vehicle for transformation?
Mm.
And I like the word chaos as well, and that's about it, because chaos is really unpredictability. But as I mentioned earlier, how do we find the patterns in the
Yeah.
chaos? And what I like to say around that is another phrase is, I'm always seeking to make chaos my friend. And how can chaos be my friend? Well, it could be my friend by understanding the patterns in the data, because in the patterns in the data that I can extract will allow me to become the holder of information. Now I take that information and I nurture it and I fashion it and I play with it to create a process by which I can use that information to apply it to a problem for a solution. See, here's the key. Every day we wake up
Yeah.
and we get up out of bed and we walk out the door, there's actually a new problem to be solved. We may or may not see it, but somewhere there's a new problem to be solved in your community, in your society. The question is, do I recognize it? Can I create a viable solution to solve it? Can I market that solution? I think when we first spoke, I mentioned that I'd never been to India before, but I'd been to a neighboring country, and that was Pakistan. Part of the reason I went there, because they wanted me to come and talk about entrepreneurial marketing, which was a solution to products that they had developed that they didn't know how to get to the marketplace. I'm sure there's a great deal of creativity in India. Some people have a challenge with, how do I get it to the marketplace? Because I know this can help my people, not only from a solutions perspective to provide them with something that could help them solve a challenge, but from a business perspective, it can also generate revenue and create jobs. So how do we get this to the not just to the Indian marketplace, but to the global marketplace, right? So nature enables transformational thinking to work.
Got it.
Not taking anything for granted and challenging everything. So you come up with a solution and then you challenge that solution until you can't challenge it anymore. And then that's when you know you have the right solution. So it's always constantly, well, what if we wrote this line of code? What would that do to the program? What if we took this out? That's the question that I found a lot, at least a lot of the CEOs, the most popular CEOs. And I've had the pleasure of being around uh, the gentleman. He just retired as the CEO of Best Buy. His name was Aber Jolie. Of just listening to him. The gentleman who was a CEO of Ford Motor Company, Alan Mulally, he turned Ford around from losing 17 billion a year to making 46 billion a year. I've had the pleasure of being around them and being in their company and just listening to their conversations. And I'll tell you that what was common amongst their conversation, one, it's all about your people. It's all about those who you employ, trusting them, believing in them, and giving them the ability to perform. Second is, as I said earlier, I don't know it all. I need help. I'm the CEO of this multi-billion-dollar organization, but I need help because I don't know all the answers. I don't have all the answers. What I need to figure out is how can I ask the right questions and how can we collaborate? Because everything, as a human being, everything is about collaboration. Everything is about collaboration. I'm gonna say that one more time. Everything is about collaboration. Everything is about respect. Everything is about inclusiveness. As a human being, especially in the United States, what you hear a lot is, well, I don't know that person. I can't trust that person. So I'm not going to do a specific thing. I said, well, you don't say that when you get on that airplane and you don't know the pilot. You don't say that about that mechanic who worked on that plane and you don't know that mechanic that worked on the plane. You don't know the mechanic that worked on your car, right? You don't know the person who made your clothes. You don't know if they put some kind of poison in your in the fabric of the clothes or not. Yes, you do trust those people. You don't know them, but you trust them. You have to because you're human, because we're all interdependent. The worst thing that we can ever think is that we're independent. We're not. That's the lowest level of human interaction. The highest level of human interaction is interdependence. I depend on you, you depend on me. We move forward together as we depend on each other. That's why inclusion has to work. But there's some people out there who don't want it to work because they either fear their level of competence or they fear that someone else is going to do something to them because they oppressed another group of people. And for the most part, the groups of people that they think are going to oppress them, we don't have in our spirit to do that. They only are looking at their spirit and what they've done in their spirit. But the people that they oppress don't have it in their spirit. And so from thinking to spirit, as a being on this earth. And one of my mentors is from India. He lives here in the United States. His name is Dr. Sri Kumar Rao. He's a retired professor from Columbia University, and I just completed one of his courses just a week ago called Creativity and Personal Mastery. And so for me, it's that continuous journey of how do I continue to push my thinking? How do I continue to push my development? How do I become a better being? One of his favorite phrases that I always say is, just bloom and the bees will find you. So I continue to try to bloom. And as I bloom, when the bees find me, the bees always cross pollinate, and they bring different types of opportunities for me to continue to grow and for me to become the best executive coach or the best consultant that I can possibly be. So my only job is to work on me to become a better Terry. As I become a better Terry, the bees come and the honey flows.
Awful, sir. Uh, you know, it's amazing the way you've explained transformation to us. In fact, if the workbook that you mentioned is on sale, I'll have Sidra take the name from you and we'll publish it across to the audience for them also to be guided by it. And we've We've crossed the time a little, so just a couple of questions from the audience, if any. Before you can of course connect with Dr. Terry and shoot out uh, to him. I am pretty much impressed by the kind of transformation he spoke about. And Dr. Terry, we'll just take a few questions from the audience because I see a few people
Okay.
willing to ask questions.
Okay. Okay.
Uh, there are a lot of questions. I'll just pick. Um, how important is it to be curious in life and keep learning? Is the first question for Bhagyashree.
Wow. It's interesting because I've been talking about that a lot. We have to be curious. Curiosity is what sparks innovation and creativity. And in this tech society in which we live, that's what we're looking for. Now, we don't have to, through creativity, through curiosity, creativity, and innovation, we don't necessarily have to create a new rocket, right? But it's a little twist on something that repurposes it for the benefit of human beings that can make the world better, for the benefit of your company, your organization that produces a new product that you can get a new revenue stream from, right? So you should always be curious. When, like I said, when you wake up in the morning, you walk out your door, you get on you go to the train, you walk wherever you're going to your job, you should look around and say, well, what am I seeing differently today that I didn't see yesterday that I could potentially create a solution for, market it, grow it, and build an organization that's going to make my community, my society better. You should welcome curiosity with it from all of those that you work around. You should even think about a little kid, at least for in the United States, a little child. A child is curious. A child is imaginative. It's only until we tell the kid, please don't do that, stop. We kill that curiosity. We kill that imagination, right? We kill that innovative spark that they have naturally. Because see, when a child is young and they don't know what they don't know. So they're exploring their environment to see what they can find and learn and do. We need to maintain that same type of curiosity at all times. So to answer the question, if I haven't answered it, please remain curious and try to become more curious every minute of the day.
Perfect. There are a lot of questions. I'll pick up out of a fun one. Fahad
Okay.
is asking, uh, you've played basketball in Carolina States in the early 80s. Have you ever met Michael Jordan?
I knew that was going to be the question. I'm going to give you a huge surprise. I grew up with Michael Jordan in the same
Wow.
city, Wilmington, North Carolina. We have the same birthday, February 17th, 1963. I met Michael Jordan when he was 10 years old. We played in a league together when we were 11. And I have the roster of the all-star team that we both made. His name is first, my name is second.
Wow.
And I've known him all of his life. We played football, basketball, and baseball together. He stopped playing football and American football and baseball when we were in high school because he began to focus on basketball. We have sometimes what we call exchange day in high school. And that would mean that, one group of students would come from one high school to the other. So he attended Laney High School. I attended John T. Hoggart. But when we were in the 11th grade, we were both taking a Spanish course and we had it at the same time. So, of course, we already knew each other. So we hung out for lunch. And I remember him telling me this. He said, he called me T instead of Terry. He said, T, I think I'm going to go to UNC Chapel Hill. I'll probably start by my junior year. Well, we know the history is he started as a freshman. He hit the shot that won the championship, and it's all been history.
Yeah.
So, yes, I do know Michael. I've known him all of his life. We grew up together. We played ball together. Mainly, we played against each other. because he went to different schools, but we all knew each other in the city. We got together, we had good times together. And my first job in Atlanta, when the Chicago Bulls would come to Atlanta, from time to time, if he had time, he would reach out and we would do lunch before the game. And what I'll try to do is on LinkedIn, in Sidra's inbox, I'll share the roster that I talked about. You'll see his name at the top and my name second. And I got that from someone in the UK who wanted to do a documentary. They saw my name, they found me, they had a conversation with me, and they sent me that roster. So I'll send the roster to Sidra, and she can share it with those who are on the call as
I'll surely
evidence of
definitely do that.
as evidence of Michael Jordan and
Amazing, amazing, Dr. Terry. I mean, the last question turned out to be about the last dance,
I.
right? We are so glad that we could have this conversation with you. It was really heartfelt, and I hope that this stands as the first interaction to a long-lasting relationship that we're going to have. And it was an absolute pleasure talking to you, and I'm really really humbled to have had the opportunity of interacting with you and leading the session. I'm sure everybody in the organization has learned a lot. Uh, me being the curious one over here, getting to interact with you, I would want to touch base with you regarding the leadership program because we are trying to undergo some transformations ourselves. So it would be helpful to interact with you further. But it has been an absolute pleasure, sir.
Thank you so very much. It's been my pleasure. I'm always grateful for anyone who is willing to listen to me share my story or share any information around books that I may have written or what my life's experience has been. Um, I think it only makes, especially because we're in different parts of the world, and we may have some thoughts around how those people are and these people are. But what I found when I worked for Mobil Oil in Los Angeles was that none of my clients were American, not one. And so I met the spectrum of people, and that taught me a huge lesson. I said that's probably where I learned my greatest business acumen, but it's also where I learned more about humanity, because I had the Egyptian Christian, I had the Egyptian Muslim, I had those from Iran, Iraq, the Philippines, Korea, Japan. All of these were and so I had to get to know all of them. And what we had in common was that we were all human. We had the same desires, the same needs, the same wants. We all wanted to provide for our families, right? And we became good friends. And I still maintain some of those friendships today. So I have a full leadership development process that includes transformational thinking. And it's a month by month, and it's experiential, meaning when you go through it, we take your experiences from the workplace, we discuss them, we debrief them, we give you a new task to go learn, and you apply it in the workplace on a day-to-day basis. So we can talk about that. It's been my pleasure. I'm honored. I'm humbled. Thank you, Sidra, for reaching out to me initially.